Thank you for being here, but man, people love you.
Good evening. Hello, New York.
Feel good, right?
There's something almost unreal about Keanu Reeves. At 61, he carries himself with the calm of a man who has seen every side of life, yet still manages to walk through the world with gentleness. People admire him for his kindness, his humility, and the quiet way he moves through fame, like he's just passing through. But behind that familiar smile is a story far heavier than most people imagine. A story he spent decades keeping buried behind silence, calmness, and work. For years, fans wondered why Keanu seemed to live on the edges of Hollywood, avoiding the chaos, the noise, and the spotlight that most stars chase without hesitation. They saw the generosity, the soft-spoken interviews, the moments where he seemed lost in thought, almost drifting. What most didn't realize is that every one of those quiet pauses held pieces of a pain he never wanted the world to see. Only recently has he started to open up in small, unexpected ways, offering gentle hints about the wounds he carried alone and the lessons he learned the hard way. And once you hear what shaped him, the way he lives today makes an entirely new kind of sense. What truly sets Keanu apart is not the tragedies he lived through, but the silence he wrapped around them. This silence wasn't cold, distant, or defensive. It was protective. It was the kind of silence people form when life has taught them that speaking too loudly invites wounds they aren't ready to reopen. And because he never complained, never lashed out, and never used his pain for publicity, most people simply assumed he was naturally quiet. But that calm exterior was holding back years' worth of storms. This becomes even clearer when you look at how he moved through Hollywood. While the industry functioned on noise, loud personalities, public drama, and constant self-promotion, Keanu did the opposite. He withdrew into himself. He stayed on the edges of the spotlight, always polite but rarely open. Even when he became one of the most recognizable faces in the world, he didn't behave like someone chasing fame. He behaved like someone surviving it. And that difference made him stand out long before people understood the reason. Those close to him often said he listened more than he spoke, observing everything with a sort of gentle patience. But behind that patience was a lifetime of learning not to expect stability, not to depend on permanence, and not to trust that the ground beneath his feet would stay still. This reserved nature wasn't something he developed in adulthood. It started much earlier, shaped by uncertainties he faced long before he ever set foot in a movie studio. Yet for fans watching from the outside, this quietness only added to his mystique. They admired the humble, mysterious star, without realizing that the mystery wasn't intentional. It was a shield. It was the only way he knew how to move through a world that had already shown him how quickly things could fall apart. And to understand why he learned to live this way, you have to go back to the beginning, back to a childhood marked by constant movement, broken connections, and the kind of emotional distance that follows a person for life. Keanu rarely talks about his early years, and that silence alone says enough. His childhood wasn't filled with the stability most kids take for granted. It was a patchwork of moving boxes, temporary homes, and abrupt goodbyes. His father's early departure left a wound that would quietly define most of his emotional life. And while he didn't grow up in extreme chaos, he grew up without the foundation children need to feel safe. There was no long-term home, no rooted community, no sense of permanence, just motion. That early instability forced him to grow up quickly. Every time he settled into a school or made a new friend, another move pulled everything apart again. Each transition taught him not to hold on too tightly, because nothing stayed long enough to become secure. And when you learn those lessons as a child, they shape every relationship you develop later. They teach you to cherish people, yet brace yourself for the moment they disappear. His mother, doing the best she could, raised him across multiple countries. But no matter how much love was present, the absence of his father lingered. Rumors over the years have suggested that the distance wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. While Keanu has never publicly attacked or condemned his father, the lack of meaningful connection between them left a gap he had to learn to navigate alone. Friends from his early life recall a boy who was warm but guarded, friendly but cautious, always aware of how quickly life could shift. This emotional fragility didn't make him weak, it made him adaptable. It molded the quiet resilience that would later become one of his defining traits. And that resilience was tested even further when he entered school, an environment that highlighted a struggle he didn't know how to put into words. School was never a place of comfort for Keanu. In fact, it became one of the first arenas where he felt the weight of being different. With dyslexia making reading painfully slow and traditional learning nearly impossible, he found himself falling behind without understanding why. Teachers misread his frustration as lack of effort. Students saw his slowness as something to tease. And the more he struggled, the quieter he became. This academic battle did something subtle but powerful. It reinforced the idea that expressing difficulty invited judgment. He learned to internalize, not vocalize, to push through silently, rather than ask for help. And that approach to hardship would follow him throughout his life. But school didn't break him, it forged him. When books and tests failed to make sense, he turned to movement, hockey, acting, anything physical or expressive. These outlets allowed him to excel without needing to fit into the narrow expectations of a classroom. Acting, especially, became a second language. It was one of the few places where he didn't feel judged for being different. On stage, he wasn't the kid who couldn't read fast. He was whatever character he stepped into, and that freedom gave him something he'd been missing, a sense of belonging. Still, this escape came with new pressure. As he discovered his talent and passion, he also realized that success meant entering a world where scrutiny, noise, and public opinion were unavoidable. And although he didn't know it yet, the success waiting for him would bring its own kind of emotional weight, pulling him into an industry that would challenge his sensitive, quiet nature in ways he couldn't have predicted. Success was supposed to be the moment everything finally fell into place. But for Keanu, it created a new kind of struggle. When the world discovered him through films like Point Break and Speed, he became Hollywood's golden young star overnight. The spotlight hit him fast and bright, but instead of enjoying it, he seemed almost uncomfortable in it. Fame amplified everything he had spent years hiding. The shyness, the guardedness, the fear of instability. He wasn't ready for the expectations that came with fame. People wanted boldness, charisma, public declarations, but he offered quiet smiles and thoughtful pauses. In a world that rewarded loud personalities, his gentleness confused people. Some insiders even whispered that he was too introverted, too distant, or too unpredictable for Hollywood's high-energy machine. He didn't play the fame game, didn't chase headlines, didn't show up to every party. And in an industry built on noise, silence becomes suspicious. But it wasn't arrogance or rebellion. It was self-preservation. The more attention he received, the more he withdrew. Not because he disliked people, but because the spotlight intensified a loneliness he had carried since childhood. Fame made everything louder, except the part of his life that truly mattered: peace. And yet, even this pressure, heavy as it was, couldn't compare to what would come next. Because the hardships of his childhood and the discomfort of fame were only the early chapters. The defining heartbreak, the one that would shape his soul, his worldview, and his entire approach to life. And that's when life delivered the blow that would change him forever. Everything he experienced before, childhood instability, academic struggles, discomfort with fame, felt small compared to the emotional quake that shook his world when he lost one of his closest friends, River Phoenix. They weren't just co-stars. They were two young men who found comfort in each other's quietness. River understood the parts of Keanu that didn't fit Hollywood. He understood the sensitivity, the introspection, the desire to stay grounded in a world that rewarded chaos. Losing him wasn't just losing a friend. It was losing a mirror. Keanu rarely spoke about River publicly, not because he didn't care, but because the pain was too heavy to articulate. Friends have said that River's passing left him with a lingering ache, something that settled deep inside and reshaped how he looked at life. It was the kind of loss that makes a person age inwardly, but the universe wasn't done testing him. Years later, he entered a relationship that brought genuine love and warmth, a quiet, private bond with Jennifer Syme. Their connection was real and unpretentious, far from Hollywood's artificial shine. Yet life dealt another cruel hand. The couple endured a heartbreak no one is prepared for, followed by a tragedy that left Keanu utterly shattered. Once again, he didn't lash out at the world. He didn't demand sympathy. He didn't use his pain to fuel headlines. Instead, he sank deeper into silence, carrying the weight of grief on his shoulders like a shadow that never left. People who saw him during those years described a man who was gentle but distant, present but living behind a protective veil. His smile remained kind, but it held a sadness no camera could hide. And yet, even in the darkest chapters of his life, something remarkable happened. Instead of letting grief harden him, he allowed it to soften him. And that unexpected transformation, Keanu's generosity, has become legendary. Whether it's quietly donating millions, giving away most of his earnings, or supporting crew members without recognition, he does these things without cameras, without announcements, without needing applause. But what most people don't realize is that this kindness wasn't just something he learned. It was something he built to protect himself. Grief can turn people bitter. It can make them cynical, closed off, or resentful. But in Keanu's case, it did the opposite. It made him gentler. It reminded him how fragile life was, how important connection was, and how every act of grace had the power to ripple through someone's world in ways he might never see. So he gave time, money, support, warmth, while asking for nothing in return. This wasn't the performative kindness some celebrities adopt when they want a good headline. It was real. It was quiet. It was healing. People who worked with him noticed he never acted like a star, never made demands, never treated anyone as lesser. And if someone was having a rough day, he noticed, even if they didn't speak a word, because he knew what invisible pain looked like. He carried his own. Yet even this kindness, as beautiful as it was, wasn't the full story. Because while he gave the world compassion, he continued to guard the deepest parts of himself. The grief remained tucked away, showing itself only in rare moments. Those quiet interviews, those thoughtful pauses, those truths that slipped out in metaphors instead of confessions. This left many people wondering, was Keanu Reeves lonely? Was he protecting himself? Or was he still healing from a lifetime of emotional fractures? And those questions fueled years of speculation. Gentle, curious speculation about the walls he kept around his heart. For years, fans have quietly wondered if Keanu lived with a kind of loneliness hidden behind his calm demeanor. Not the dramatic, screen-written kind of loneliness, but a gentle, lifelong solitude shaped by everything he survived. People online shared stories of seeing him sitting alone on a bench or walking with a thoughtful expression. These moments went viral, not because he looked sad, but because he looked real. Rumors began to circulate, soft ones, not malicious, suggesting that Keanu kept people at arm's length because he feared losing them. And while he never confirmed anything directly, it isn't hard to understand why people would think that. When life repeatedly shows you how fragile connections can be, you learn to protect your heart with quiet boundaries. You learn to love cautiously, to let people in slowly, and to find comfort in solitude rather than fear it. But these rumors weren't negative. They were filled with empathy. Fans weren't gossiping. They were trying to understand a man who spoke less with words and more with presence. They admired the way he handled fame, the way he stayed grounded, the way he avoided the chaos that swallowed so many others in the industry. And as the years went by, something unexpected happened. Instead of staying closed off forever, Keanu's world began to open again. He formed meaningful partnerships, embraced creative collaborations, and allowed himself to connect, not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly, in the way that made sense to him. And in those moments, he finally showed a side of himself the world had been waiting decades to see: acceptance. Yet the most surprising part is how he finally found the courage to speak. Not about the tragedies themselves, but about what they taught him. And when he did, his words revealed a truth more powerful than any rumor ever could. When Keanu finally began to open up, he didn't do it with grand speeches or emotional breakdowns. Instead, he shared small truths, gentle, reflective thoughts about grief, healing, love, and mortality. His insights weren't dramatic. They were philosophical, grounded, and deeply human. He spoke about how grief never truly leaves, how it becomes intertwined with who you are, and how healing isn't a destination, but a quiet process that unfolds over years. He revealed that the losses he endured shaped his understanding of life in ways he never expected. Instead of running from pain, he learned to live alongside it. Instead of pretending everything was fine, he learned to accept that some days would hurt more than others. These weren't confessions. They were revelations. Small windows into a soul that had carried far more than it ever admitted. In recent interviews, there's been a shift in his tone, a softness, a clarity, a sense of a man who has finally come to terms with the storms he weathered. He's found companionship, stability, and a creative path that aligns with the person he's become rather than the star Hollywood once wanted him to be. And through these moments of honesty, he offered the world something unexpected, proof that even quiet people, even private people, can find peace after a lifetime of holding everything in. His truth wasn't an explosive revelation. It was something far more powerful. It was the acceptance of his own journey, unpolished, imperfect, and deeply human. When you look at Keanu Reeves today, you don't see a man defeated by pain. You see a man shaped by it, softened by it, strengthened by it. At 61, he's not defined by the tragedies he endured. He's defined by how he rose above them. His journey isn't dramatic or outrageous. It's quiet, thoughtful, and deeply inspiring. He turned grief into compassion. He turned loneliness into reflection. He turned hardship into humility. And somewhere along the way, he discovered a form of peace that only comes from surviving what once felt unbearable. And maybe that's the real reason the world loves him. Not because he's flawless, or mysterious, or endlessly kind, but because he is living proof that even the softest hearts can endure the greatest storms and still choose to be gentle